So, one of the things that we often talk about here is obviously reforming the UK political system, how it operates, and how it should change. And I am very, very much in favour, of course, of moving towards the UK towards a proportional representational system based on a single transferable vote. I think that would be the best system before. And as I've talked about before, even though, yes, I do agree that the House of Commons does need to change, I am in personal favor of thinking that in reality, the target, the true target for those campaigners should not at the moment obviously be the House of Commons, but not going for it yet, but going for the House of Lords first. I think going after that first, not only does it make a far better target, but far more people across the political spectrum agree that the House of Lords needs to be reformed. Very recently, we've just had Volt UK, a very left-wing party, unite with the Reform Party, aka the former Brexit Party, on agreeing that electoral reform does need to happen. Now, they got a lot of stuff for that, but I've said I don't care if the outcome of that partnership towards a push towards changing the voting system towards proportional representation is a fantastic thing. But as I've said before, we cannot allow just the right wing in this case, because it is mostly the right wing who is in favor of trying to change the House of Lords. And of course, if they get their way, then they will, shall we say, twist the system to suit their rules. And it's not just obviously changing the voting system, it's also how we fund parties as well. So public funding is often a very contentious issue, but if you really want to get out of all the dark money and suspicious money that gets donated to the Tories, and as we're about to find out here, roughly about 10 people make up a quarter of the donations to the Tory party. So the real question should be asked is, how much power do those 10 people actually have over the Tory political party? It's a very interesting question that should be asked, and should be asked every hour on the hour to any Tory politician that you can get your hands on. So let's go into this and find out the very, very murky depths, of course, of this current, shall we say, funding system of UK political parties and what it should be really moved to. So before we go jumping into this, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And also down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can always buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel. So on with this. This comes from The Guardian with the title of "Without State Funding, Britain's Politics Will Always Stink." Another week, another sewage outflow of corruption into the polluted river of Tory politics. And are voters so profoundly cynical that not one political bribery of MPs or even touting for contracts actually shocks them? Polling suggests that the country is not losing its sense of smell. The time may soon be here to take up John Major's call in The Guardian to clean up party funding and stop dirty donations from distorting democracy. For that, the public has to swallow what it deplores: state funding for political parties. Every inquiry has concluded there is no alternative. And here's the latest filth. The Tories direct their biggest donors to apply for public posts controlled by Downing Street unit hidden from public scrutiny. The Sunday Times reports that the officials behind the scenes support and directing the applicants to a very secretive number 10 unit. And that's their win-win, collecting the cash for the party while trying to pack the Tories into appointments into public and art bodies. This comes on top, of course, of the open democracy, revealing that donors giving at least 3 million or more to the Tories are virtually guaranteed to be offered a peerage. The stink surrounding the Tory fundraising does leave out, of course, an email from its Treasurer's office telling their big donors, "We thought you might be interested in the latest list of public appointments. This is important. Conservatives rebalance the representation at the head of those important public bodies. The party's donor club and the League group of charges at least a minimum of £50,000 a year for access to ministers." The Tory party co-chairman Ben Elliott and the Duchess of Cornwall's nephew is the co-founder of Quintessentially, a luxury co-shared service offering lifestyle management for the ultra-wealthy. It boasts that it can do anything. They once told me of delivering bongo drums to the bored teenage sons of a billionaire on a yacht mid-Pacific, and paying a top Manchester United footballer to play with a plutocrat's 7-year-old son. That's the world that Elliot fishes in, while he also guides donors to public appointments. The Times also reports that Elliott's and senior civil advisors at number 10, and once a major donor, would also be an excellent candidate to oversee the emergency COVID-19 loans. His staff lobbied for Mohammed Absari, the telecoms millionaire, and at least a £750,000 Tory donor, to the chair of the National Lottery Committee Fund. Here, he made it to the last round of the selection, and this week, Elliott's fundraising comes very much under scrutiny, where Army takes his feud with the Tory party to the High Court in a libel claim against a former Tory MP, Charlotte Isley, for questioning the origins of his wealth. In all this muck, no one knows a donor's true influence, but sometimes they break to the surface. Jonathan Lisley, the chair of the secretive Midlands Industrial Council, bankrolling the Tories and, of course, the Taxpayers Alliance, threatens their cash in the Daily Telegraph, saying, "I have been a party donor through bad times as well as good times, but my enthusiasm can ebb and flow." And cortigating in the rise in the national insurance contribution and tax rise, Leverley writes, they have never heard of the Lavia curve. It is time for the government to act as a free enterprise champion and act conservative. Can Boris get a grip or go? Other donors are also on the rampage over Johnson's failings, but it is not for them to this ordain his fate. The colossal power is wielded by a very dangerous few donors, says the Brunel University professor Joan Fichter, with just 10 people donating a quarter of Tory funds. That's more than £10 million. And since Johnson became Prime Minister, the particularly pernicious Johnson and his electoral bill is abolishing the Electoral Commission's power to prosecute illegal donations. Again, something that I've warned about before. Labour was always over-reliant on the power-wielding of the union leaders. And Unite's leader Sharon Grisham last week rattled her money bags in a very crude threat over the dispute over the bin lorries in the Labour-run Coventry. Let me be very clear. The remaining financial support of the Labour Party is now under review, she said. Keir Starmer would have none of it, saying the Labour Party that I lead is not going to be influenced by threats from anybody, whoever they are, and it is not just an absolute matter of principle. Fisher points to at least the 2019 general election, when Unite donated 4.6 million of Labour's 3.8 million fund. The union has already cut funding after Jeremy Corbyn's departure, and the politicking ignores the union members' interests, since Labour's strongest policies include fair pay deals in every sector, ending zero-hour contracts in security, and guaranteeing every workplace access to union recruiters. Unlike the very secret Tory influencers, the latest Unite's attempt at the cash for influence is very rudely transparent. And again, I've thought about making a video on that, and I'll tell you now, what is Unite doing? Threatening this funding is so ridiculous. It's so stupid. Again, especially since you see here that there are current policies that include the fair pay deals for all sector, ending zero-hour contracts, and guaranteeing every workplace access to union recruiters. That is something that Unite should be overwhelmingly happy with. But it's not. They are desperately trying to wield a very unduly influence. So it's a very bad thing for them to do. And of course, John Major rose to a tremendous fillip against Boris Johnson's corruptions, although as a Prime Minister, he was no Cicero. As ever with the former Prime Ministers, you get to sign their retrospective wisdom, regretting the radical reforms that they never dared, such as party funding. The system needs cleansing, he writes, to stop politics being the plaything of the rich or prosperous groups, or just pressure groups. The limited donations by individuals and unions, so donors no longer sway policy through an open checkbook. At the last review in 2011, the Committee on the Standards in Public Life called for capped donations, with state funding at least 50 pence per year per voter. But Nick Clegg slaughtered it at birth in the Commons, saying that the austerity spending just couldn't afford it. And of course, deep public mistrust means that politicians fear asking taxpayers to foot the bill. And although the political parties are essential to a functioning democracy, less than 2% of the electorate actually ever join a party. The best idea for distributing state cash came from the Power Inquiry, chaired by Helen Kennedy. The voters of an electorate should allocate at least £3 of state voucher to any party. And that too was killed stone dead. And of course, the plummeting polls show the limit of how much voters actually priced in corruption with Johnson. Even though enough is enough, the country just hasn't run out of outrage. Whoever inherits Johnson's very filthy stables can only make a clean break by purging the political funding. And I agree there. We've seen this time and time again, not only in politics here, but in the rest of the world. The more you allow dirty money in and you allow politics to become the plaything of the very rich, of those who can afford it, the worse the country becomes, the worse the policy becomes, and it doesn't help the people at the bottom. And at the end there, you saw some very interesting ideas of having a voucher of every voter gets like a £3 voucher to give to their party of choice. That would be a very interesting idea, I think, to actually do. And again, time after time after time, every single review into this always says take the funding out of the private sector so that large donors can't do that, and put it into public funding. Now, of course, I know that's not going to make everyone happy, but I'll tell you what, it would end and almost put a stop to a lot of corruption going on in our British politics today. And I think it's generally time that we had a serious conversation about doing this. So, as always, please do hit that like and share button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.